Could the arts and entertainment be the secret weapon to bring people closer to Jesus Christ? Could the arts and entertainment introduce people to faith and inspiration better than any sermon ever could? Is there a way to create entertainment that both inspires and entertains? Is it possible that the Lord gave us entertainment for these very reasons? A couple of months ago, I did a video called Losing Light in the Entertainment Industry, which basically goes into the fact that the entertainment industry, the secular version of the entertainment industry, is not a good place for faith to grow. And that is still true. But in this episode, we fight back. Those are legitimate movies. Like,
they're great movies.
Look cheesy. They look great.
They look great. And the stories are great. The story's
Yeah.
genuinely great. Like, it's just like, hey, there's Mormon missionaries in Germany. They're trying to get out before it's closed. Like, that's a palm sweating. Like, that's great.
But I'm with you. I didn't like the cheesy, like, praise Jesus, put your hands out there, and like, you know, all that's. And because I grew up. I'll tell you, I grew up listening.
I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't either.
I can't do CCM, man. CCM is too cheesy. Like,
no, for real. And
we don't need to vamp the chorus 20 times. Like, I get that some people love it, but it's like, if we're vamping the chorus 20 times, you know, I feel it, Lord. I feel it. Like, it's just like,
right.
Dude,
and so I'm like, I was all, you can't be an anti-Mormon when you go to the sacrament meeting and you listen to the primary program singing "I'm a Child of God."
Live stream, there was an evangelical just bashing the comments. Joseph Smith's not about it, all this stuff. And he's like, but this song's really good. It's probably better for us as the Latter-day Saint community not to be like, hey, well, like, here's my defense and all this stuff. It's probably better to say, like, I don't even have to address what you're having to say here. It's been addressed. You have nothing new to offer here. We've been in the game for 200 years.
Yeah, there is nothing.
You know the
new.
arguments. There's nothing new here. Yep. So here, let's do this. Are you having a good day today? Yes? Let's start there. Let's try it. Like, let's get to know you one-on-one. And I think music can do that without having to talk to somebody.
Welcome to the Rock and Roll Fireside featuring Brother Jacob's Jams. I am your humble host, Kyle Jacobs. And with me tonight, you guys, I have Brenden Blackham. I cannot wait for you to hear his story. Brenden, how's it going, brother? I'm
super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Oh, geez, a little bit. I'll be quick. So I got a lot of plates spinning, but again, my name's Brenden Blackham. Playing a couple bands, the Bombshell Flowers and the Saltaires. I'm based in northern Utah, but I also am I'm a content producer, video guy, basically. So I work for a company called Content Supply out of Denver, and then my wife and I have a company called Blackthorn Media. So my whole world is like this weird in between of business, entertainment, and music. And that's like where I spend like almost all of my waking hours is within those three veins. So working with clients directly, playing shows, recording. And I also have, you know, my wife we have one little boy, and we live up here in Tremont in Utah. And so if it's not family, it's music, business, or video type stuff. And so all this type of talk about entertainment industry, how to go about that while staying faithful, keeping your covenants and not selling your soul. I think I'm super excited to share that with not only your audience, but also like talk through it with somebody who also understands.
Right.
Camaraderie there, right?
Right. Well, I love it. And I'll tell you what, you're living the life. That is, juggling those things. Like, those are great things to juggle. So I'm sure it's a lot of happiness for you there. So, you know, when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to the arts, those two usually go together. Usually entertainment is an artistic endeavor. You know, you like a band, you go to shows, it's a movie, it's, a TV show. All of those can be considered art. And there's obviously different levels. Sometimes, like, guys, this is just entertainment. There's no art in here at all. But, one thing that I heard a long time ago was that members of the church, there is so much artistic talent that we could have our own industry, whatever it is, music or movies or anything like that. And that is true. You go to any type of, even just like your ward talent show, and there's extraordinary talent there. Musically speaking, typically a part of the culture of the church is to be dedicated and to work on those type of talents. And so it's a really neat thing to see. And I did a video a couple of months ago talking about basically, if you get into the entertainment industry, the secular industry, it is really hard to keep your faith and to keep that light burning bright. And I think there were a few people who were discouraged by that. They're like, man, I want to be in the entertainment industry. I want to be able to let these art forms flourish. And so I want to talk with you about that. As a matter of fact, we're going to highlight a comment here. There's a comment that came up on the video called "Losing Light in the Entertainment Industry." So check that out, audience, wherever you are. And it kind of blew up there because I think a lot of people were really they're really interested in the idea of, again, being entertainers. And here is a very interesting comment, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Brenden. It's kind of a long comment. It says, "It's also impossible to stay creative and never go inactive at all in the church." Okay, so I'm understanding that to say, like, if you want to be creative, you've got to go at least a little bit inactive. He says, "I don't think you should wander far, but the church isn't exactly a hotbed of curiosity or individuality when it needs both. I was an art major at BYUI because of how conservative it was. I didn't think I could get along with the secular artists. And it turns out Orthodox Catholics discussing the nudes on the Sistine Chapel are more realistic than non-art majors at BYU when it comes to modesty and immodesty." Not exactly sure what that means, but the basis of that comment is like, hey, if you want to create good art, you got to stray a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't want to come off too brash because, but I'm going to be honest, that's stupid. And I'm going to say this bluntly because I want people to be clear. If you think you have to compensate your values in order to create something, then I think you got to see, like, what is your true master? Is the master, like, is it God or is it the art? Now I've wrestled with this a long time. It was actually like, before my mission, I was a very big Neon Trees fan. I was like going that whole route, like I'm going to be a Provo rock star and then blow up. And that was like the timeline and everything. Tyler Glenn left the church right around the time I was about to leave on my mission. And it broke my whole foundation because he was putting things in music videos that I wanted
Tyler
to mention.
Glenn,
Neon Trees lead singer. He's the lead singer of Neon Trees.
Okay, gotcha.
And so he did a whole album about leaving the church. And it was very, very, it was tough on me because he was someone I really looked up to. And so after seeing that, it kind of reframed things. And shortly before, Dan Reynolds left the church and they had their whole shebang about that whole element. And so for me being, I grew up an hour south of where these guys started in Provo and being really involved with like that velour scene and like following it super closely. I saw this wrestle that a lot of those musicians have where it's like, okay, I am building this following, but I can't really keep my, if I can wear this outfit on stage, I don't have to wear my garments anymore. Okay, cool. I'm going to do that. Okay. Well, if I start, swearing more in lyrics, and I'm in bands that sometimes we need to be better at that, but I think the element is like, if you keep etching away at your values and you feel like that's getting in the way, then I think it's the classic where Christ has said, do you serve God or serve mammon? You have to pick which one's your master. So I would say, don't leave like your faith, or like there's an element of orthodoxy that is good in terms of like you keep your covenants and you stay strong to that. But there's also some things within the church culture that you're making a bigger deal than it really is. And what I've seen happen, at least for creatives, is when I was on my mission, I was in these two groups, Meet the Missionaries, Meet the Elders, and it was a really, we ought to dive into that later on. Maybe that might be a whole episode itself.
Yeah.
We can dive in. It's a long story, really cool. But after doing all these firesides and performing in these stake centers, missionaries bring 300-500 people to every building. There was these moments of like, you get a taste of, whatever you call fame, whatever you call like excitement. People would recognize me at like any church building. I'd have teenagers be like, Elder Blackham. Like I'd get crap like that all the time. And I still get texts once in a while of like, hey, you helped inspire me to go on a mission. That feels great. Right. So I think a lot of people they're coming down to this like, oh, I want a taste of that. But also like there needs to be a bridle in all of us. If you guys don't know what bridle is, I'm like, this is like, my parents are older. So I'm like, my analogies are old school, but
yeah, no, that's good.
A horse
grew
to
up
steer
with
the horse.
Horses in the background, so I'm following you.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like when you think of a bridle on a horse, it's to steer you. If there's no in your art, if you're just steamrolling and you're not actually thinking about the impact about the art you're about to create, I think you do yourself and the world a disservice because you got to be thinking a couple steps ahead. I'm going to make something, but like sometimes you just make it and you get it out there, but then you got to refine. And you got to polish. And sometimes songs will come out of the sky and they just come and they write themselves and they're there. But if you're writing a gospel song, for myself, like I've written probably 20, 30 of them in my life they're hard to get right. Yep. You got to take your time to do those things. And I think there's a reason for that struggle. So I don't blame this artist for feeling like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't know if I can keep my faith and do all these things, because secular art is easier. Totally. It's hard to not come off cheesy when you do gospel stuff. You always come off cheesy. You always come off like stale. You always seem like the Sons of Provo, or you always seem like Saturday's Warrior. So how do you go about that? That's the wrestle we need to figure out as Latter-day Saints in our culture. And that goes for artists too. I think like, is it Library of Godwin is the visual artist that he has done like really, really cool line art stuff. I don't know if you ever looked at his stuff. Maybe we could pull it up.
I haven't.
Library of Godwin. He's found a way to like mix a really unique contemporary art with the gospel. And I'm not saying everything you do needs to be gospel oriented either. A lot of music, I do lots of secular music, but I also like don't shy away from talking about the gospel at shows myself. I usually throw a plug to Jesus at some point here and there in the shows, or like there's ways to go about those things without like purely stuff like hiding your religion while you're doing the art.
Well, so 100%. And I'll tell you what, there's a little bit of a counterculture that's coming back to where it's becoming a lot more common for people to do that, to, you know, shout out to Jesus, or, you know, even if they're not like a praise band, you get someone like Jelly Roll or Post Malone or something like that, and they'll just throw all those things out. You know, there's a lot of question as to whether or not they're being genuine, but who are we to say? You know, either way, that is becoming a little bit more acceptable. I love what you said about the bridle, because you know, we read about how the bridle controls the mouth. James talks about that in the New Testament. And I was studying that one time, and I was like, you know, I've always, because again, I've got a lot of experience with horses and, you know, bridle, and I've always read that to say, control yourself, like pull back. And that's what the bridle does. You know, you pull on the reins and it makes their mouth go like that. And so they stop. But I never thought like, oh, you know what? The bridle also controls left or right, wherever you're going. And so it's not just hold back. Like, okay, if you're singing a song and you really want to drop an F-bomb, okay, maybe control yourself, because that's not going to be uplifting, you know, whatever it is. You know, and that's the pull back. That's like, hey, that's not appropriate. But you can use that control to kind of guide wherever you're going to go. And I think you can still be authentic while doing that. And you know, that comment, you know, that we read from the video there, it reminds me of this thing. I've got a buddy who loves, he's what you call a cinephile. He loves movies, and I love movies too. And so we talked about movies just constantly, and he was dead set, absolutely immovable to say that if you're going to do an action movie or a drama, it has to be rated R. Because it's not authentic if people are not dropping F-bombs, if there's not like an obscene amount of blood and gore. And so we fought about that all the time. And there's the secular world has gotten really snooty about that type of thing. If you look at like Oscar nominated movies, they're all rated R, and all these big movies that are like, oh man, that looks great. The cinematography is amazing. Everything looks good. And it's rated R, and it's always rated R for the same reasons, you know, and it gets really disappointing because the secular world is trying to, I think it's a trick to trick everybody to say that, oh, it's not genuine, it's not authentic unless it contains those elements. And I think that's a total lie, because personally for me, there have been countless times that I have been moved to tears in a PG movie or a PG-13 movie, you know, where it didn't necessarily have all those things. And so I love the idea of maybe LDS artists or Christian artists putting that to the test a little bit and calling the secular world's bluff on that.
No, I think that's an interesting perspective when it comes to movies, because I think for myself, whenever I'm watching cinema, maybe it's just because of the small town I grew up in, I don't worry too much about the things you see, because when I grew up in high school, just like the water that these kids swim in right now, that everybody swims in, that entertainment. I mean, the Charlie Kirk thing that happened like a month ago, absolutely horrible. My nephews saw that within 20 minutes after it happened, and they see it on TikTok, you know?
Yeah. How old
these
is he?
kids are, they were both like, I have a nephew that's like 15, 16 year olds. Dude. And so it's like these teenagers that are seeing stuff that's this level. So when I think about stuff like that, I think some desensitization of children's happened that like, that won't affect them like it affected you or I when we were younger. So I think there's some elements there, but I also think that you're right in terms of like, let's find a culture where some of these elements, these kids may be so past like, oh, gore doesn't affect some people. I really don't think it. Some people it doesn't. I mean, if you grew up if you were a Lamanite or a Nephite back in the war chapters, it would have been whatever. It would have been like, oh yeah, my buddy got stabbed, and this dude, Ammon had the arms in bags the other day. Like there's just stuff like that you just don't even think about. So like in terms of what people see in life, I think the biggest thing as artists is that we tell stories that can capture people and how to live the right way. And I think that type of art that can connect with people, no matter what type of background and experiences, I think, what's T.C. Christensen's been doing really well with the last couple movies I've seen him do.
Oh yeah,
where they're like these real experiences, and they make your palms sweat. Like Escape from Germany, I think is one I just watched recently, and like I know that's a church-based thing. The IMDb credits, the IMDb reviews, super funny. If you ever want to just scroll through and find anti-Mormon mobs, just scroll through any T.C. Christensen IMDb stuff. He's great. Like, T.C. Christensen's the man. But
those are legitimate movies. Like
they're great movies.
Look cheesy. They look great.
They look great. And the stories are great. The story's genuinely great. Like it's just like, hey, there's Mormon missionaries in Germany. They're trying to get out before it's closed. Like that's a palm sweating. Like that's great. Like it would have been cool if it was J-Dub's missionaries. It's great. So
totally.
Like, at the end of the day, like that's the type of art that I think moves the needle the most. Is like, what's a timeless type of story we could tell, and how can we tell it in a way that would move the layman audience and entertainment? Because those are the places where I feel like we could work on as a culture.
100%. And I think as if you're wanting to promote faith or the gospel or some of those elements that not everybody agrees with, the key to me is it's got to be relatable. You talk about your palms sweating. You talk about being moved, whether it was a J-Dub or a Mormon or anything like that. It's because you can relate to the character. You can relate to the setting. You can relate to something. Because when I approached, I was in the secular music business for a number of years, and it was just too icky, and it just ended up not being for me because I was like, this is just not my place here. And I felt the call to create music that was bringing people closer to Christ. But I'm with you. I didn't like the cheesy, like, praise Jesus, put your hands out there, and like, all that's, and because I grew up, I'll tell you, I grew up listening
I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't either.
I can't do CCM, man. CCM is too cheesy. Like,
no, for real. And
we don't need to vamp the chorus 20 times. Like, I get that some people love it, but it's like, if we're vamping the chorus 20 times, I feel it, Lord. I feel it. Like, it's just like,
right.
Dude,
and so I'm like, I was always like, when we were trying to make it as a band, I was like, we're never going to touch that. Even though we're very devout and diehard, LDS, we're not going to touch that because it is just cornball. And that's
a good word for it.
When I first kind of broke through that, it was the concept of relatability. So I wrote an album called Speaking from the Dust, and it's a musical celebration of the Book of Mormon. And it is all sung from the perspective of heroes from the Book of Mormon. So you've got, from Moroni bearing the plates to Mormon looking out across the people and seeing that his nation has been, obliterated. And there was some, and I mean, if you listen to it, you may still think it's cheesy, but none of it is a praise Jesus type of thing, because the whole point of it was to say, you know what, because I felt called to help people see that the Book of Mormon was truly written for us, which is a difficult thing to really connect with, because it's like, well, that was written 2,000 years ago, different times, different culture. What can I relate to on this? So creating that album was such an experience for me in being able to strip away the cheesiness. I didn't want it to sound like a Sunday school lesson. I wanted it to sound, for lack of a better term, secular in a way. It's rocking, and and so how do we do that? How do we not have the cheese factor and make it relatable, not just to an LDS audience, but if you're trying to bring light into the whole world, not just our little corner of the street, there is some surgery that needs to be performed that it can be digestible. So check out Speaking from the Dust, a musical celebration of the Book of Mormon, when you have a chance, and tell me if it's cheesy or not. Everybody put in the comments. Just be nice, all right? If it's cheesy, just don't comment at all. You remember what Thumper says in Bambi.
Yeah, I think there's formulas that can help alleviate that, right? When we're looking at, in terms of a songwriting perspective, or when we're creating video content, or even just the way we talk to people, you can see the different vibes and how anybody presents anything. And the formulas that connect with the general audience or that connect with a certain type of audience, you need to find that authentic way to mix that with the gospel, because the gospel sits on top of so many things really well. Like a good piece of cinematic music, you throw a gospel message in front of that, like, man, that's awesome. Or like, if you do some sort of like Christian rapping, there's this Polynesian dude, I can forget his name,
Dude,
but he throws down like really cool lo-fi beats, and then he'll rap on it. His flow is amazing. So like someone like that. I mean, the stuff I did as a missionary, Meet the Missionaries, Meet the Elders, I actually wrote a song called Moroni's Promise, that when you're talking about like all these different things, talking about Book of Mormon heroes. I also wrote a song called Heroes too, but we never made it. I never recorded it. I got lazy toward the end and when I got married and stuff. But
we're still musicians, man.
I know.
We've got that in us.
I know it's the curse, but I think there's the element of being able to find how do we make like rock music sound great with it, with a gospel message. And I think if we can find those touches, I think Nashville Tribute Band nailed it with country. I think that we're finding a couple people who've been able to master it for like some poppy styles like Eleni, and some of those have mastered it for like pop. But I still think there's probably a gap that we will figure out more and more with the rock stuff, that Kyle's going to fill the gaps. And so guys, I'm into like a southerny rock band. I think there's somewhere in that vein we could hit, but I don't know.
Yeah. I love where you're going on that, because I'm like, I've had that in my soul, because I grew up in the 90s. I grew up listening to 311, Red Hot Chili Peppers, all that stuff. And I'm like, man, rock is so underrepresented. And it's like, we got to break that mold, because I've had that exact same complaint. So when you said it, I was like, dude, Brenden, we're Christian spirits here, because we've got.
Yes, there's something about that in within to do that. Because I mean, there's part of me like I'm also a jazz guy, right? So I played jazz guitar in high school. I think the children's songbook is a book of jazz standards.
Oh,
there's
dude.
251s all over the thing.
100%.
If you just got, honestly, you just need a combo. We need 3 or 4 amazing jazz musicians, a solid trumpet, a sax player,
and then you just throw some keys, stank drums, on bass. It. Yeah, seriously, that's all you got to do.
And if you just hit every single, you could do 300 song album and all the songs in the children's songbook, that thing would lay down sales for the end of time. So it's just like, there's things like that just people don't think about in our culture. You just need people with a little bit of taste. And so I don't know. I think Kwaku El talks about it though. Like, we do need the wake up call that like, we can't just ship whatever. We need to think about making something quality, and the more time we spend to make something quality, then the better it is. But again, not compromising values while doing that. Right.
Because you can fall into that trap. Like if I say something that is LDS culture, seeped in LDS culture, it'll sell. We're just going to copy and rubber stamp it because we're just selling to Mormons. I think we're selling ourselves short if that's the case. Because again, we're meant to shine our light to the world. And so there's kind of a balance that we've got to strike to say, we don't compromise our standards, and yet we still put in the good time and effort into creating something that is artistically viable. And back to this comment that we started the episode off with, I don't understand the concept or the theory that you have to step away from God in order to experience new things. And I love what you said, that the gospel is able to sit on top of everything. And it can, like, whatever, even if you're going through difficult things, you're discovering things about yourself, and the world instantly wants to separate you and cut that string between you and the Spirit. The Spirit's there to help you through all of that stuff. And so it's this bill of goods that the secular world likes to sell, that says, oh, if you're really going to try to discover the truthfulness of the gospel, you've got to go to every other online source, every other, doctorate, PhD dude from Harvard to tell you all these things. Don't go to your scriptures, right? Like, okay, how about we do both? How about if I'm searching for truth, I am overturning every stone, and I am not separating myself from the Holy Ghost. And I think artistically, it's the same thing. Like, we don't have to go off on this weird journey to create something special. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really proved that to me was my wife and I went to Washington, D.C. a couple of years back and went to all the Smithsonian museums and things like that. And it was so eye-opening. The older art that just completely moves you. And I'm not usually a visual artist. The visual arts don't jump out at me as much as like as music, certainly, but I've grown in that area. But you look at the stuff like from Monet and all these and these sculptures, and then you look at a lot of the modern art, and it just pales in comparison. And from somebody basically on the outside of the visual arts world, I was like, what is different? This modern art is like, I'm sorry, garbage. And this really old ancient art. And I saw that the difference was the modern art was all self-centered. It was all self-expression. This is me, which there should be a part of that in your art, I think. But it was a spotlight on me. This is me. This is how I'm feeling. Whereas all the old, really impactful art that has inspired millions, maybe billions of people throughout generations, were outward. They were praising Jesus. Ultimately, they were these monuments to a creator. If it's not Jesus, in their faith construct, some higher power. And I was like, that is outward, whereas all this garbage was inward. And you see that in the music industry as well, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to point that out too. And I think there's the element of like the outward and the inward, the stories that we tell and those timeless moments that can be a way to do an inward reflection while sharing an exterior message. And that's the type of stuff that also connects nowadays. When I think of like, a Mona Lisa or the, you mentioned Monet, I think about, when I've toured like the BYU Art Gallery and go see little things like a Norman Rockwell type stuff. I love there's an element of story and timelessness that goes into telling and sharing. That's all entertainment is, right? It's really just storytelling. We're storytelling people of the Latter-day Saints are, right? What's the first story you learn about Joseph Smith? What's the first story you learn about Jesus? What's the first story you learn about just any of that? We tell a lot of stories. We just need to find ways to share stories in formats that lots of people can connect with. And I think it's interesting that it's like, why would I have to compensate values to do that? And I understand the pull though, and the push, because I struggled sometimes when I was going to church and I'd be like, hey, I learned this song on my guitar. Can I sing it in sacrament meeting? And I had most of my bishops in my life have said, no guitar in sacrament meeting. On my mission, I had all my bishops were like, you play guitar and you want to sing in church? Really? Sure. Great. Let's do it, man. That sounds great. And I actually got to see it. What I'd usually tell them was like, hey, I'm going to play it like a harp. Can you have a harp here? Yeah. I'll play the guitar like the harp. And then usually they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll deal. I'm stressed, but I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But like there's times when artists are faced with I hate the word dissonance because I feel like anti-Mormons use it so much. But like there's a little bit of a rub when it comes to like, hey, like here's this cool thing I want to do. And musicians or artists were usually baked inside of us like, hey, I want to do this thing that's going to share light. Because if we're going to sing a song in church, like you don't want to have it, we're singing songs about Jesus Christ. We just want to, like, you have that thing, something inside of you calls you to do some art and you're going to share it. It's a bug or I don't know, maybe it's a disease, but like you get it and you have to just share it. And so sometimes when we're going to the church is very structured and sometimes artists are not. We're like the opposite of that. So we got to find that, how do we make this rub between like, hey, sometimes the structure of what we're doing here might be tough. Like I'm coming up and I'm like, hey, I'm an artist and I want to do these types of like old school types of paintings and things like that will probably never sit on the wall of a church building. How do I reconcile that? It's like my recommendation would be, what's stopping you from being able to do a lot of those elements of art without compromising your values? Because you realize the line is pretty, like, for you to like cross that line, it's pretty far out there. You can do a lot of cool things within the confines of the gospel. So it's really just how do you find your way to do what is uniquely within yourself within those parameters? And there's a lot of room there. And if you don't know what that looks like ask the Lord and then double check. If you want to be really stressed about it, double check the handbook. But I'm gonna be honest, like if it doesn't affect your temple recommend interview questions, you're probably gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Most of the times. Like that's usually my recommendation to artists is like, is it going to affect your temple recommend interview questions? Maybe think about that. But if it doesn't, it's like, dude, like God kind of made you an agent unto yourself. He put that something within you to do that stuff. Like I play drums and I play guitar and I sing punk songs, I sing Southern rock and I sing these music that like, but sometimes we tell unique and kind of weird stories and it's fun. But like, and part of that is like the conversation I have with people before and after, like people know where I stand when I go to a show. they watch me play a song. They know where I stand. Like, I may be rough around the edges, but like, they know, like, I'm a Latter-day Saint. That's my tribe. That's my vibe. So like, there's ways you can let your light shine without having to be like, hey, you know what? Like, I will never, ever put myself in a situation where I'm around people who are not clean and not pure. It's like, dude, shut up.
Right.
That is
chill.
that's not what we need. We don't need that. But
Right.
we also don't want to be the person that's like just complaining about every single thing all the time. Like, about like, oh, well, the church never let me do this, never let me do this. It's like, you're an agent unto yourself. Find the best way to mix the you that God made you to be within the confines of the gospel, and you'll find there's a lot of room there, and it's awesome. So like,
well, and I'll tell you, I love it too. Just even from an artistic point of view, you know, the idea, again, compromise isn't the right word, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you think about some of the best art, at least music, certainly movies. It requires multiple people who have different views of things, and there is a little bit of tension there. I mean, the Beatles, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, you know, and so artists, we get a little bit full of ourselves. You're like, well, this is the best, and this is what I want to do. And if I don't get to do it this way, then, you know,
right,
doom on you,
right,
to quote Ice Age. But you'll realize that there are things that the other person is saying, whether it's your bishop or an audience member or somebody else in your life, that can help you find that balance and reconcile some of those things. You know, I think of, again, you know, I'm not going to walk into a sacrament meeting with my full band, drums and bass and guitar. But is there a way that I can use one of my songs to be a musical number in a sacrament meeting, if that's what I want to do? You know, is there a way that I can alter that a little bit to fit those standards without compromising? I love the challenge. You know, we've got a song called "Come and See," and it's about the Savior coming to the Americas, and it was so funny because when I wrote it, I was like, oh, I imagine, you know, you fantasize and you imagine like, oh, in front of just like 10,000 people, man, everyone is going to put their hands up, you know. Again, wouldn't want that. But the most effective way that I've performed that song was in a stake conference, was in a chapel when it was just me and my brothers harmonizing and just me on the piano. And I was like, this is at a spot that I didn't even think it could be, because of some of those parameters there. Now, on the flip side, hey, can I bring the full band to the ward trunk or treat? And we can kind of blow the lid off this place a little bit. You know, so there are all sorts of avenues that you can do that. And for any bishops and stake presidents out there, I'll remind you about the updates to the handbook that have really made the chapel a place where artistic expression can take place. Now, obviously, you know, during sacrament meeting and during, you know, our block of worship, you can't do this type of thing, but you can have events there that are clapping. Right? There's applause, and we're so not used to that. We've gone through like 200 years of like, oh, you don't do that, and that's not the case anymore. And so I think there is a lot of missionary opportunities that can be had. Heck, just I'm in Arizona, and just up here in Mesa in last Easter, there was a full-blown like gospel, like I'm talking like Southern gospel, clap, tambourines, drums, everything in the chapel. And it was funny because the people who were there and who were conducting and presiding are like, you guys, this is different. We are okay to clap. And the members of you know, who attended are like, oh, you know, like it was a whole new thing. And, you know, obviously follow the Spirit, but those type of things are happening, and they are bringing all sorts of people in that are being moved by music. And to me, music is a heavenly art. We know there is music in heaven. Yeah. The angels sing, you know, and so like, okay, is there going to be rock in heaven? I hope. That'd be sweet. But the whole point of that is that music is there to help us connect with the Spirit in a way that just reading your scriptures can't do, you know? And so we've got to really embrace that. I just went on a whole tangent there.
No, I love it. No, I think it's super important because I think about like interfaith firesides when you're trying to give like bishops and stake presidents an idea of like, okay, like I've got people who have talent, or maybe I have people with talent and they just don't know how to do it, but I'm feeling inspired to try and get more folks in the church. Like interfaith musical firesides are a laydown of turnout. you will get lots of people in the building that have never experienced, like just my marketing hat that I'll put on for my day job, right? The biggest thing with trying to push a message and you're trying to lower the barrier to entry. And what I realized when I was in Meet the Missionaries and Meet the Elders, with all those musical firesides I did, it lowered the barrier to entry to experience what it's like to feel God's love.
Yeah.
Because usually when people are sitting down and we're having a lesson with two, dudes with white shirts and ties that look like we're tax guys, and they're in their living room, that's a different feeling than like, hey, these are two young kids who've, like, when you see me and the other elders that I was in the groups with, when I'd sing a song about like my faith crisis and coming back to God and why I wanted to follow God. The song's called Please Stay. I'd sing that and I'd sit on the front of the stage and I'd sing it's just me and a guitar. And people would, I got so many people that would tell me like I felt something there. And you would have so many people, if like if they saw us sing or they saw us do these different things, it takes down the barrier, because it's like, oh, I'm not worried about like the culture and stuff. You're singing. We're humans. That's like an instant connection thing.
It's
a
universal language right there.
Exactly. And so as a term of communication and just a way to lower barriers, it's a really, really easy lever to pull to try and get new folks in the church building.
I'll tell you, it brings to mind, who said it in this conference? I know President Oaks said it in a long time ago. It's a quote that has stuck with me. But basically the idea is like, when people come to church, I think it was Elder Uchtdorf who said this, when people come to church, they don't necessarily care about priesthood authority. We're talking about for the first time. People coming in for the first time, they don't know the church. They don't care about priesthood authority. They don't care about the wonderful organization of the church. Maybe not even the first vision. What they care about is how they felt when they were there. And then that will then lead them. Okay, this feeling was here. How do I have that more often? And now the doctrine. Now we could say, here's how you get there. And so what President Oaks was saying, this was years ago, he said they're more concerned about the results of the doctrine at first than they are the doctrine themselves. And that is a natural, normal, and not a bad thing. They're walking in there investigating, how do I feel? How do people treat each other? Okay, I like this. How do I get there? And that's when we can start having the white shirts and ties, and let's talk about the first vision and all these type of things.
And it's that first impression that is so important. And then also, I think it's good for the membership, at least for me, if I always have the mindset of any time we're at church, it's someone's here, it's their first time.
Yeah.
Someone here, they've never been here before. So that'll change how I talk about things, how I would treat people. And I know that's a weird way to talk about it, but like if any first impression with somebody, you can either bring them closer to God or farther away. So I think there's a conduct thing, and thank goodness for repentance and stuff, because I screwed up plenty of first interactions. But I think I think there's a lot of goodness to be had when it comes to art, and kind of again circling back to your initial comment we're talking about, like there's people are looking at results, right? Mm-hmm. If you are a unique individual that was designed by God to bring those unique talents, you've got this unique perspective. Like, what a great sales pitch for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right. If you can be yourself within the confines of covenant. Like, you don't have to worry about all of the list of all the things that we worry about. It's like, dude, it's 5 things: faith, repentance, baptism, receive the gift of the Holy Ghost, rinse and repeat. Like, we need to lower down the guard. Let's focus on those things. And then flourish, do the things. Like, you're an agent unto yourself. Build the king. I like how Jonah Barnes calls it, build the kingdom subversively, or something like that, where it's, you don't necessarily have to be within the confines actually called, have the exact calling to do things. Like, if you have it within you to do good, and find a way to go about it. I think that's what your pod's doing right here. Like, that's why I'm an avid listener myself. So I'm happy to I hope it inspires more and more people to be putting their hats on that way. Think about how we can share what we know, what we do, how we go about things.
Yep. I appreciate it. And I'll tell you what, I firmly believe that we were given individual missions before we came to this earth. In addition to, the covenant path that that is everybody has that shared mission. We've been given our individual missions. And I think our talents are an indication of what that mission is. I have a firm belief in that. Real quick, before we call it quits tonight, I loved as you were talking about, using music and even any real form of entertainment as a way to make a first impression, I think it is also a great way to be a rebuttal to anti-Mormons. And that's a big thing right now. We've seen a lot of influencers come up. I've got a couple of videos on this as well that push back against the really unfair things that former members of the church and anti-member evangelicals say about us. There's a rising up to counterbalance that. And I think too, I've got a theory, and obviously this isn't all we need to do, but some of the things that these guys say are so radical and so crazy that I think the lie is made manifest naturally. When they tell you that, like, oh, these guys are so evil and they don't believe in Jesus Christ. And then you walk into the building and everyone's super nice. And all we do is talk about Christ. And even when we talk about Joseph Smith, it's because he helped point us to Christ, and so that naturally, like, wait a minute, what Mark Driscoll just said totally is
wrong,
whack, because that's not what I feel at all. And I think music can do that as well, where we can say, like, oh, these guys, and even if it's less, I guess, aggressive, like, oh, Mormons are weird. You know what? We got this cool song. like you can't, I don't know. You can't be an anti-Mormon when you go to the sacrament meeting and you listen to the primary program singing "I'm a Child of God." Like, I don't care who you are. When you hear that, like, I'm a big baby, I just cry all over the place. But you're like, this feels different. Something feels special here. And music, again, that universal language, I think, can be a great rebuttal to a lot of the hate that we receive.
Absolutely. And it's a push for me because, like, I consume a lot of this Latter-day Saint centric content, and I see a lot of the perspectives of I served my mission in Denver, and so I either had atheists, potheads, or evangelicals that would be that was my spectrum of people that were not members of the church, and there's a lot of faithful members out there. So in that process, I'd get the same arguments from atheists and anti-Mormons, and I find it funny. I don't know why it brings to mind this funny moment when we live streamed one of the Meet the Missionaries shows. And you can find it if you go to Meet the Missionaries on Facebook and stuff. You can go watch the whole thing there, the whole firesides we did. These are like 6-7 years old now. I feel like an old fart now. But the live stream, there was an evangelical just bashing the comments. Joseph Smith's not about it, all this stuff. And he's like, but this song's really good.
Yeah.
He would do stuff like that. He's like, you know what? It was just like, especially when we had a couple songs, like we had one song called Disciples, and it's all just like being a disciple of Jesus Christ. He's like, man, Mormons are messed up at this song. This song's great.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like,
dude, I saw,
and sometimes that's enough. We'll take that.
I read somewhere, I was on my mission. I served in Las Vegas. And I read, there was an anti-Mormon pamphlet, and they were like, don't listen to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. That's how they get you. And it's like, and it was this whole thing, like, don't go in there and listen to those guys. And what they didn't know they were saying is like, hey, you're going to feel the Spirit if you listen to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Don't go there. They're tricking you. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
no.
So
that's why their tactic's demonizing it, because in terms of a competition and a financial perspective, it's in their best interest to try and poison the well. And if you can poison the well, then you financially protect your bottom line because you prey upon the ignorance. But the second, if we can just show, like, hey, you don't, honestly, as a power move, this sounds odd to say, but like, it's probably better for us as the Latter-day Saint community not be like, hey, well, like, here's my defense and all this stuff. It's probably better to say, like, I don't even have to address what you're having to say here. It's been addressed. You have nothing new to offer here. We've been in the game for 200 years.
Yeah, there is nothing.
You know the arguments. There's nothing new here. Yep. So here, let's do this. Are you having a good day today? Yes. Let's start there. Let's try it. Like, let's get to know you one-on-one. And I think music can do that without having to talk to somebody. It can be like, that's a really good way to, like, break down the wall. And if we have good art softens the heart. Yep. As weird as that may be. So I don't know. It's a way to, I mean, for me, it took a long time before, it took actually, like, the inspiration of other rock stars and stuff to be like, oh, these guys are in the church and they're active and faithful, and some of them fell away. And then you, like, go and find out, what do you really think?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just nice to know that there's people out there that, like, oh, I'm not crazy for believing this stuff.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
And so I try to do that because the kids that I teach guitar, that I teach drums. Like there's ways that you can be in like the indie, the punk, the rock scenes without having to necessarily like, I don't have to do drugs. I don't have to smoke pot. I don't have to do all the crazy things after shows. I just we're coming to jam. We're going to have a good time. You buy a t-shirt, sure. And then we can go to Village Inn after. You know, like that's, right. that's a typical, like if you come to one of my shows. So it's like, to me, there's a way to mentor us as musicians. We need to find ways of how do we inspire the teenagers and the youth to like, hey, it's okay. This is a cool thing to do. Like, you know, I have this thing I every day right next to me, I've got scriptures right before I work. I work from home. So this is my day job. Like it's okay to talk about the gospel with everything you do. It's a great thing. It makes my life better. It makes my family happy. We're sealed in the temple by covenant as an eternal family. Like those are solid things. Like
results of the gospel.
Results of the gospel. Those are positive things to share with people. And though when things get tough, the people who have the gospel and really believe it, they're able to weather it really well. And those are really interesting results, and those are good. And so art can show so many of those things. But I mean, for those who want to live on the fringes, like keep your covenants and find the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's my message. Like to
Amen.
it. Like you can do it. You can do it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Brenden, thanks so much for joining me. I 100% think we need to do this again.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about. Before I let you go, where can we go to find your music, or where would you like people to discover some of the things that you're creating?
I would say the best place to find it right now, I'll work on updating a couple things, but it's my website, Brenden Blackham, BrendenBlackham.com. And then you can find my music portfolio, some marketing stuff. I link to my day job and whatnot. That, or this sounds so dumb, connect with me on LinkedIn would be my other recommendation. As dumb as that. That's LinkedIn, my two places.
You're such a professional.
I know. Website and LinkedIn are like my two places I like hang out the most. Everything else is pretty private. That or like Facebook if you really want to. But yeah, I feel like I'm such a boomer in that way. But I have a lot of my music and different stuff on Spotify, whether that's Bombshell Flowers, The Saltaires, Meet the Missionaries, Meet the Elders. All those are out there. And all the proceeds, if you listen to the Meet the Missionaries and Meet the Elders, all the proceeds go to the Denver North Mission. So like all the streaming royalties fund them. So that's an awesome like thing that you're helping subvert, covertly build the kingdom by streaming them. So, but anyway, so that's me. Where you can find me.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me. And folks, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the Rock and Roll Fireside. Hit up Brother Jacob's Jams for all your LDS rocker needs. And most importantly, don't forget to live with faith and courage. We'll see you next time.